All right, gang, so you should find this worksheet in OneNote titled Finding Zeros. This is going to be a real quick refresher. There are 10 questions on this worksheet, but we're only going to do a couple of them as examples, and you're going to do the rest for homework. So first, when you're being asked to find zeros, you're basically being asked to find the x-intercepts of a function. And the way you do that is you set the function equal to 0. So in this case, number 1, it's already been factored for us, so we're going to set it equal to 0. So we put equal 0. And we all know from Algebra 1 that when you have a function that's been factored and it equals 0, then all you have to do is you have to set each part equal 0. So you get 5x minus 2 equals 0, and you get x squared minus 3 equals 0. And then you just have to solve each piece. So if we add the 2 over, we get 5x equals 2, and then divide by 5, and you get x equals 2/5. So there's one of your zeros. We're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to move the 3 over, so we get x squared equals 3. And then we have to take the square root of both sides. So you get x equals, now here's a trick, there's going to be two answers, plus or minus the square root of 3. Because remember, when we take the square root of something, you could get either a positive or a negative. So there you have it. You found the zeros for that function. It's already been factored. That's all you got to do. So that part, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Next, let's move on down. So if we move on down to the next one, notice that these have not been factored yet. So you're going to have to factor them. That's going to have to be your first step. So we're going to set it equal to 0. And then we're going to factor it. So 2x squared, so it's going to be 2x times x, and that equals 0. And then I look at the 4 right there. So I know I got to use either 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Those are the factors that I can use. So I notice that I need to get 9. So I think I'm going to use the 1 and the 4. Negative 1 and negative 4. And here's the way you can check. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8x. These two things right here, they add up to 9x. So it works. So to find my zeros, I'm going to do 2x minus 1 equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. And then I solve each one. 2x equals 1, so x equals 1/2. And then x equals 4 for that one. So there's your zeros. And you're done. Now I'm going to do one more for you, one more with you. This one we can't factor. Number 6 is the one I'm looking at. If I set it equal to 0, I want to try and factor it, but it has a cube. And it also has 4 terms. So I can't factor it the way I did number 5. Instead, I'm going to do something called factoring by grouping. So I'm going to group the first 2 terms, and I'm going to group the last 2 terms, and I'm going to factor out something they have in common. Now, the first term, 4x cubed plus 3x squared, they have an x squared in common. So I'm going to factor out an x squared, and that leaves me with 4x plus 3. The 16x and the 12, they have a 4 in common. So I'm going to factor out a 4, which is also going to leave me 4x plus 3. Oop, get rid of that. 4x plus 3. And that has to equal 0. Now, notice that 4x plus 3 occurs in both of them, which is what we want. So now I can combine those 4x's plus 3's, and I can move them out front. So that gives me 4x plus 3. Sorry, it keeps popping up like that. I don't know why it's doing that. 4x plus 3. And then that leaves me, when I pull that 4x plus 3 out front, that's going to leave me with x squared plus 4. And that has to equal 0. And then we set each part equal to 0. So I get 4x plus 3 has to equal 0. And x squared plus 4 has to equal 0. If I solve this one, I get 4x equals negative 3. So x equals negative 3/4. There's your first one. Second one, I get x squared equals negative 4. And then I take the square root of both sides. Now here's where you're going to have to remember your algebra 2. What happens when you take the square root of a negative? it's a complex number. It's an I, and the square root of 4 is 2. So I get plus or minus 2I, and those are my zeros. So that's the way we factor and solve for zeros. So what I'd like for you to do for homework, do the rest of this page. There's 10 problems. I did 4 of them with you. And you're going to do the rest. And then I would like for you to notice that down at the bottom, if you go to the very bottom, there's the answers. And you can see whether or not you got the same answers that I did. So good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.